it's connecting.
All right, we're live. Amantha, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. This is episode 2 of Peer to Peer. This one we're doing something fun. We're going to talk about excess and surplus inventory marketplaces. Originally, we were going to have Amrita on as well, but she couldn't make it today, so it's just going to be me and you, Amantha. But just a quick note for everyone joining. I'm Colin Gardner. I run a fund called Yonder, which is focused on early stage marketplaces. And I run a Substack on here called Take Rate, which all we do is talk about marketplaces all day, every day. And today I'm excited to have Amantha on. She is the founder of RxPost, one of the portfolio companies in Yonder. She's done an amazing job building an amazing company. And I'm excited to share it with everyone today. So without further ado, let's just jump in and have you tell us about RxPost. What does RxPost do?
Yeah. So I am a pharmacy technician turned founder and CEO. Basically, we help pharmacies sell their unused drugs to other pharmacies. And that's how our marketplace got started, because my background has been in pharmacy. There's just so much excess and waste that happens, and it's really impactful to the bottom line of pharmacies, especially independent pharmacies where I worked for a long time. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, nice. So, talking a little bit about like your founder journey. When did you start the company? Um, and I guess tell us a little bit about the moment that got you into it.
I still have the email back from 2014 that I sent to a pharmacy attorney asking about like what are the legalities of facilitating the sales between pharmacies, and basically said you have to track certain things, but we're good to go. And so it's been an idea for a long time. Pharmacy technicians don't necessarily get paid a lot of money, so really had to think about like how to bootstrap and be resourceful and resilient. And so it was during the pandemic that I was visiting my sister at her WeWork office, and I was talking about this idea, and someone suggested that I pitch their UCI computer science program to have some students build a prototype for free, and that's exactly what I did. Who knew, essentially 4 or 5 years later, that would be the first of many, many pitches that I've done in front of crowds. So, the students were amazing. They built a really rough prototype that used PayPal to send funds from user to user. They built the marketplace. I took it out to my network of pharmacies here in Los Angeles and had them test it, collected a lot of feedback, and then I was all in. I liquidated my savings accounts, raised some money from family members, and then Googled how to hire a dev shop. And I wish I would have had a founder community back then, but at the same time I don't, because it was so like critical to my journey getting here today. But when that project went way off the rails, I actually tapped one of these students back in, and now they're my founding engineer. And so it's one of those silver lining moments where you always have to keep your eye towards opportunities, just adapt and keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's a long game, and you really don't know how it plays out. Um, So I personally loved when I originally met you, getting to learn about the pharmacy space and kind of the uniqueness of um, the whole marketplace in general. One of the things I'd like to dive into is like, tell us a little bit about were pharmacists already selling their excess inventory? Like, how are they handling it, and kind of what has RX Post done to make that different and unique now?
Yes. So one of my job duties as the pharmacy technician was exactly that. It was, if we got stuck with a really expensive, maybe like a $5,000 cancer drug at the pharmacy that we special ordered for someone and that we can't return back to the wholesaler, and that patient cancels the medication, it's really difficult to find another buyer, another patient for that. So it was my job to call around to a handful of other pharmacies that we had that working relationship with to say, hey, we have this sitting on our shelf, like we're not going to use it. It's just going to sit here collecting dust until it expires, and we've already paid for it. We're going to have to eat the cost of this if it does expire. Do you have any patient need for it? And if we were lucky enough to find a pharmacy that said yes, then it was a very manual process of coordinating delivery. Am I sending our driver? Are you sending your driver? Am I going after work to drop it off at your store? And I think most importantly, like, how do we get paid? There's no button on the cash register for this. So it was, writing on a piece of paper that Elliot's pharmacy owes us $5,000. You tape it to the wall. And I always thought, if this piece of paper falls off the wall and disappears underneath the abyss of the refrigerator, never to be seen again, there is no accounting for it. And so, like, I just knew that there's a better way. We could create a bigger network, and that we could really streamline the process.
Got it. So basically, it was this it was just pen and paper version of how to do this, and really kind of no market for it, no real rails for doing this. So, I think one of the again, I think one of the interesting things is this sounds like a very offline process. Like, is there when you have kind of gone to market to get this inventory on the marketplace and things like that, is there any kind of unique qualities about pharmacies or anything that kind of kept them from going online or anything like that? Like, what did you have to do to kind of get those people online?
Yeah, I think with our customer type, it really varies. There are some that are going to be tech savvy, some that are not as tech savvy, but fortunately enough, they all have to know technology enough to use computers in the pharmacy. Everything's being done on a desktop, so they have at least those basic skills. I think one of the interesting things that I like to bring up about our industry and technology is we actually do fax marketing, because a lot of pharmacies still have fax machines, and it has been extreme. It's very cost effective. It's a way to reach a lot of the audience very quickly, and like, our technology is built to be extremely simple to use, because we know that our pharmacies just don't have time. So we actually had a pharmacy receive one of our faxes. They never had received a phone call or in-person visit or even an email. It's just from the fax. And they were able to self-onboard and complete their first purchase in 12 minutes flat.
Oh, that's super cool. So basically, if I understand it correctly, you get inventory listed on the marketplace from one pharmacy. You then send out like a fax blast, so to speak, to a bunch of other pharmacies, and do they respond via fax, or do they call, or just go to the website and then buy that inventory? Is that how it works?
The marketplace is built out. So the marketplace, functions very similarly to eBay or Poshmark. The fax marketing is really to just broadcast, like, hey, the newest editions that came out this week are all consolidated. Are any of them piquing your interest to then log on? But they can call us, they can text us, they can chat with us online. Like, we make ourselves available through so many different channels of communications, because you got to meet with the customer where they're at, right? I think you don't want to ever back your customers into, well, you can't call us, you have to use it this way, you have to use it this way. And I think it's been a really great benefit to have this high level of communication with our customers.
Yeah. So, I think what's interesting is these, the marketplace that you're operating is really in this, like, it's a surplus and excess inventory marketplace, right? And so you kind of relying on people to essentially have too much of something. Um, from your experience, like, how is that, like, different than what I call like an evergreen supply marketplace? What are the unique characteristics of that you think probably founders should be aware of as they go into building one of those?
Yeah, so we have, when you think about prescription medication, there's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of, like, SKUs, so to speak. So It's really difficult for us to get very consistent supply. It's, different pharmacies will end up with different overstock at different times, depending on, where they're located, their insurance population, whether it's Medi-Cal, Medicare, or a lot of commercial patients. And so that inconsistent supply has been a challenge, but it's also, right, another problem to go out and solve. So how do we go figure out the supply side in a way that's more consistent? Well, we bring on more traditional suppliers that want to essentially leverage our marketplace and what we've essentially built, an e-commerce platform to easily put medications on, facilitate transactions, and then really make those shipping options easy so they can drop ship directly to their pharmacies.
Got it. And so one of the questions that I have about all this is that, so do they, when they're listing their supply, they basically take an inventory like weekly, daily? Like how does that work? Like how often are people uploading inventory?
As soon as they're realizing that there is overstock, I think as a small business owner,
Yeah.
when you know that you have a $23,000 injectable medication that you're not using, you're very quick to figure out how can you recapture, that cash flow. So they're
Got it.
coming directly to the RxPost marketplace or reaching out to us and saying, like, help, right? Can you help?
Hmm. Yeah, I think what's in, most marketplaces will, you know, are really on like a primary buying. And so, like a value prop might be around savings, like you're, essentially finding the best price or something like that. Whereas for like excess and surplus inventory, you're actually more in a cost mitigation kind of world where, like, I guess on the supply side, you've outlaid capital for whatever you bought, and now you're just trying to recoup as much of that as humanly possible. Right. So, like, interesting. Do you think people like have a target around like how much of their cost they try to recoup, or do you have any sense of like how much people generally get back?
Yeah, so I think it's about 80%. So one of the neat things about our marketplace is it's costs recoupment on the sell side, but also on the buy side, it's savings.
Mhm.
Because our sellers are motivated to sell things at below market price. And that means that both parties really get to benefit. And the way that we do our pricing is ultimately the seller does get to say what they want to sell it for. But we do a suggested pricing because, it's a medication. We have data points that we can pull on as to what the medication is actually worth. And then we do take a 10% take rate. So all in all, after the payout, I think the pharmacies are receiving 80%, and they're thrilled, right? Because that's 80% more than they would receive if they let the medication expire.
And then the pharmacy that buys it, they are able to sell it essentially at a, like, roughly 100% of the value and make some delta there. Is that the
Well, the pharmacy that's buying it from the other pharmacy, like they're seeing discounts, 5 to 10% higher, if not more, on certain medications than they would from their typical um, wholesalers.
Got it? Okay, so this is discount relative to the wholesale price, and then there's a markup above that that they get. Um,
Yeah, so I think like if like the pharmacy may have purchased something for $1,100 and then they'll put it on the marketplace for $1,000 and then they'll receive $900 and at the end of it.
yeah. Another interesting facet of your marketplace is that both the supply and the demand can like switch sides in the sense. Um, is that like talk to me about that? It's fairly unique. Like not most marketplaces don't have that kind of supply and demand flip flopping. So I'm intrigued how you guys handle that and how you promote getting pharmacies to go from being a buyer to a seller and seller to buyer.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, right? It's we
Uh oh, it looks like we lost Amantha. She'll be back on. Um, while we're we're waiting for her to jump back on, I can talk a little bit about her business. So I think one of the things that Yonder invested in RxPost pretty early on, and I think what for me what was exciting about this business is there's inventory that is essentially offline, um, and it needs to be sold, and so there's this urgency around putting this inventory in the marketplace and selling it, uh, which is really valuable. Lots of marketplaces, they may have unique supply, but the demand doesn't have any like dire urge to buy it now. And so that's kind of, I think, one of the interesting things about this marketplace is that as the inventory comes on, and this is really for any excess and surplus inventory marketplace, is that there's an urgency to sell. And so people want to discount and move product. And that's what makes these marketplaces, I think, really interesting and get really big. There's a number of Ghost, Max Retail, that have gotten to a pretty decent size. Ghost just raised a Series B, and so I think this whole space is massive. There's about 500 billion, kind of estimated right now, in like just excess inventory sales in the United States, which is massive. And they're expecting, I think predictions are like by 2030 it'll be like 830 billion. So it's a category that like has line of sight of reaching like a trillion in size, which I think is just when you think about venture scale outcomes, and markets to play in, that's what's really interesting. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them while we're waiting for Amantha to come back on. So feel free to ask them. I think another kind of interesting piece about the RxPost business, that we didn't get to talk to you guys is it really has this interesting what we call marketplace plus model, where it's a marketplace plus SaaS. So what they've done is they've built a SaaS product that is essentially kind of inventory management for the pharmacies to understand what inventory they have, and things like that, which then makes it easier for them to put the drugs back on the marketplace. But also longer term, what that does is it allows them to potentially do like wholesale inventory sales, and things like that. So there's some really interesting, neat areas and applications for what they're doing. Um, the So I think those are what they're like super interesting in this space. She's also, as my understanding, started in California market and has gone on to the New York market and has like seen significant growth in sales from doing that. I think there's like market by market differences and regulatory pieces to this market, which makes it really fascinating. You know, I think marketplaces that have like a regulatory element to it, create a barrier to entry. And that means if you can get your licenses and do everything correctly, you can actually have this kind of like competitive advantage and regulatory capture that can be really, really interesting. Um, but back to the subject of like we were just talking about with her was marketplaces that have both the supply and the demand having kind of interchangeability. It's fairly unique, that you have this. When I was at Outdoorsy, we did look at this, and I think it was like it was like under 5% of the supply would ever rent an RV, and vice versa. It was very small. We did see some on the demand side. People would like rent an RV and then go buy it and list it on the platform, but it was a relatively small subset. Whereas I think on the RX Post marketplace, um, it's like much bigger. Basically anyone can do it. Uh, One second, inviting Amantha back on. And so I think that's one really interesting qualities there. So that what that means is that like your CAC can actually be quite low, because if you bring on one side of it, you have the other side kind of readily there. So I think for her, she doesn't have to go and acquire both the supply and the demand every time. Hey Amantha.
Sorry, the
Yeah.
phone overheated because it's
Oh
an
no.
older model, Founder
Yeah.
Life.
Yeah, fun. We were. I was talking about one of the cool things about having the supply and the demand being kind of interchangeable. Is it really lowers your CAC. Like like you don't have to go. Like you almost don't have this like cold start problem of who do I acquire first, the supply or the demand. Obviously, you need like people that want to sell drugs and people that want to buy, but almost they have both skill sets, right?
Yeah, I think what we see a lot of the times is like people either come on as like really price sensitive, price savvy, and they come on to buy, and they consistently look to us for these great discounts. And then on the other side, we have people who, we spoke to them. They had that pain point of they have so much expired inventory, and they love an avenue to offload the stuff before it expires and recoup that cost. Um, and so they're selling off the items, and they're like, wow, like, why don't I also save money on the things that I need? So that's kind of the journeys on both sides.
Interesting. Is there like particular like types of drugs that sell more often than others?
We do a lot of inhalers, and I'll tell you why that makes sense, because there's so many different brands, and as a pharmacy, we want to stock all the inhalers in every single strength, regardless of whether we have patients, on that medication, because if someone needs it, someone needs it. We never want to have to tell someone we don't have it available for you, go somewhere else. That's not a pleasurable conversation to have. So we buy it all. We stock it all, and then we notice, this box is dusty. Like, how long has it been here? And it's like, oh, it's gonna expire maybe in the next 6 to 7 months. Haven't used it, in the past year that it's been here. Like, let me see if someone else has better use for it. Put it on the RxPost platform. So, you know, a lot of these medications, if you could argue pretty much all medications out there, like there's use for them, right? Like, it's not that someone made something and no one's ever going to be interested. There's always a place somewhere that has a patient that needs the medication. So how do you connect that data of, like, we have all the information about all the inventory on of every pharmacy shelf in America, and we have access to, like, all this dispensing data, what pharmacies are using. So how do we better connect those 2 points? And so we're really excited to be the ones tackling this problem.
Hello. We also have Amrita just joined. Sorry to cut that off, Amantha. That was great. Uh, Everyone, this is Amrita, one of the co-founders of Sotira. We're excited to have her on. One, Amrita, do you want to tell us a little bit about Sotira real quickly? What you guys do?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Satira. We're building a platform to be able to offload and monetize surplus inventory. So a lot of people don't know a ton about the overstock industry, but a quarter of all inventory in America, 25% is overstock. It's unsold, it's surplus, it's inventory that can't be sold on primary channels. And my co-founder and I have a really strong background in the secondary market, and so we've created a scalable tech platform for brands, retailers, distributors, manufacturers to be able to sell into the secondary market and monetize.
Nice. And I should say congratulations on raising your round. That was
Thank you.
announced 2 days ago. Yeah. I mentioned on here that Yonder is fortunate to invest in both of your guys' companies. So I'm excited to be supporting you guys. Some of the questions we were asking Amantha about surplus and excess inventory marketplaces, I think one of the cool things about RxPost is that the supply and the demand are they can interchange because a pharmacy can buy this, can sell and buy at the same time. But I think your mark, in what you do, it's a little bit different. I'd love to hear kind of like what you think of like the unique characteristics of your marketplace, and kind of like what that looks like. Um,
Yeah, I think what's unique is that we're building an obviously a very different industry. Like, we're building in supply chain logistics. This is an industry where all of our customers, again, me and my co-founder Gary, we ran liquidation businesses. We've ran many routes before we started this company. It's all pen and paper. It's all Excel. It's really old school. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that. They're like, oh, my Amazon package showed up. My package from Shein showed up. It's like the logistics involved behind that. There's so much work. There's so much labeling. There's so much picking, so much packing. And so I think that we're able to automate, and we've cut transaction time down to like 3 weeks, down to 2 days. Our fastest transactions have been something was posted on a Tuesday morning, early afternoon. It was purchased Tuesday late afternoon. It was picked up at 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. Like, that's unheard of in the industry currently. Things take so long. There's so much bureaucracy.
yeah. And so tell us like a little bit more about like maybe like what the supply side looks like in your business. like type of business that would be using your like your marketplace to like liquidate inventory. So we talked a bit about pharmaceuticals and how they work, but I'd love to hear more about kind of the dated CPG good space.
Yeah, for sure. So we do a bunch of categories. One of the big ones is food and bev. We work with a lot of CPG brands, both startup brands and also enterprise brands. We're partnered with the biggest instant commerce companies in the US. So they obviously do deliveries to people within like 30 minutes. You may be familiar with some of these companies. They have big distribution centers. They also have MFCs, which are micro fulfillment centers. And the supply is pretty much like a lot of snacks, a lot of drinks. Think like typical items that you'd see in like grocery stores, convenience markets. Again, these are items that they're not perishable. They don't require cold chain or reefer trucks. Like they don't need to be refrigerated, but they have expiration dates. And in the industry, anything under like 90 days, like 3 months, is considered really short dated. At 6 months, retailers and grocery stores start to get worried and they start to consider pulling things from shelves. So people don't think a lot about that, but a lot of these companies in America, they have really high standards for expiration dates. And there's a whole market, again, that we operate in where an item could have even like as little as 2 weeks of dating and it can still be sold and consumed by an end consumer. And so that's pretty much where we're at, is we see a sustainability opportunity with a lot of overstock getting dumped because these brands and these retailers are like, I can't sell this on my primary channel. Like, we have a guarantee that like your product has a minimum like 6 months dating. Say it's like a cereal box, and we're like, okay, on our channels, like our buyers that purchase on our marketplace, we went out to visit some of them last summer in New Jersey, and we were shocked to learn that 80% of what they purchase from Satira, these are like repeat buyers who do big orders with us. Like 80% of what they purchase on our platform is bought by end consumers within 2 days. I was mind blown. I was like, the foot traffic that these buyers have in the surplus inventory space, like they're actually like nothing's going to landfill. Everything is getting used.
Interesting. And so these like end sellers that are buying this inventory, they have like storefronts themselves
Yeah,
that they're
we
got.
don't do anything online as of yet. It's all been physical brick and mortar stores in the US, primarily because like me and Gary have run ecom brands, and the big issue with reverse logistics is like with selling returns, selling overstock, unsold inventories, that you don't want to cannibalize your forward sales. So if like what we're doing, if it's only in physical brick and mortar stores, that like if someone's typing in your product on Amazon or they're typing it on Google and it shows up on Amazon for cheaper, that's cannibalizing for your Shopify store. If it's in a physical brick and mortar store on the border of like New Hampshire and Maine, where we work with stores like in that category, like there's a very low chance of your primary customer, who again is purchasing at premium prices, knowing or seeing that.
Got it. One of the things we were talking about with Amantha, she was saying that kind of like discounting like if you think about the wholesale price to what the people sell at is like roughly like 80% of value. Like
Yeah.
in your space, is that what you guys see, or do you is even more of a discount?
So our space is a little bit all over the place because again, like they have strict expiration dates. I would say like 50% of costs is like pretty average. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's 100% of cost. Sometimes if something's really short dated or if it's like a random product, it will be like maybe 10-15% of costs. I would say it does vary quite a bit,
Wow,
but typically the prices that we're seeing are an average of 15% up to 10 times higher than traditional liquidators. So all of the customers we work with, especially the enterprise ones, are making a lot more money than they would with any brick and mortar or manual solution.
got it. So you said 10 to 15% of like the wholesale value. Um,
Yeah, cost
well,
effectively. Yeah. Like not
yeah,
MSRP, because MSRPs are typically inflated quite a bit. Like when you're selling in bulk like this
yeah.
at pallet levels, you're not looking at MSRP.
Got it. I think one of the unique things that both of you guys are angling towards is like having more of like a SaaS integration with your partners, right? Like to understand inventory. Um, like I guess maybe Amanda, you can go first. Like, how important do you think that's going to be for like your success going forward?
I think our industry makes it really unique because all the data does exist at the pharmacy level, right? Like we're plugging into APIs with pharmacy POS systems essentially to get all that dispensing data and, inventory that is coming to the pharmacy. While a lot of pharmacies don't currently use inventory management, the inputs are there. So it's really easy to kind of, one, create virtual inventories for the pharmacies, especially now because of new regulatory compliance standards around, chain of custody and track and trace, which actually requires that every drug in the supply chain is, as it moves, has an electronic record that is being sent to every partner, which does include the expiration date, which is really interesting. And I don't know if any other industry, other than maybe food, is getting there with some of those GS1 standards. And so it's becoming a SaaS-enabled marketplace is really where we see where we're going right now. And that way we can really work seamlessly behind the scenes for our pharmacies, because like inventory isn't their core job function. Their core job function is helping patients, but it is a necessary job function of their business. So how do we do it and make it super easy so that they're focused on patient care?
And Amrita, do you guys see the same thing? I imagine companies aren't necessarily that have like excess inventory haven't necessarily hired or have this muscle built around selling it off. Has that kind of been your experience too?
It's a great question. So I think there's a lot of big enterprise CPG companies that have insane amounts of overstock. Like we're talking like 50 to 100 truckloads a week out of just one distribution center in one city in California. And then you think about how many DCs they have all over the whole country. I think that reverse logistics is starting to be more of a talking point relating to ESG, relating to like B Corp status, like enterprise, like corporate responsibility. So I think that now is a really good time for what we're building, because like 5 years ago people weren't talking about how to monetize overstock. They were just dumping it. And America's
Hmm.
biggest food distributors, which are notoriously not kind toward brands, like they've been called out a lot. There's been a lot of notable exposés, especially this year and last year, a lot of employees coming out and talking about it. They have insane garbage contracts where they are very used to just dumping a lot of overstock. And I think now there's more attention on them and on their actions, and they have more of a need to, okay, like we're going to hire a reverse logistics team, or we're going to invest money into some sort of solution. Like this is going to be a common practice to make sure this is at least getting donated, if not sold, to make sure it doesn't go to landfill.
Got it. And so how do you like, like from your software, are you guys like integrating directly with their inventory management systems? Like how does that work so you guys can handle that kind of scale?
Yeah, we are. So we're integrated with storage capacity models, which is typically like it actually gives us more information than inventory management system, because inventory management
Okay.
systems is just like what do you have, units, quantities, dating, UPCs, like it's just categorization. Storage capacity is like at what point is our DC or distribution center or MFC micro fulfillment center like full? Like when are we bringing in new items? When do we need to clear items? Like that really helps us have like a picture of like if something has been in the DC for 90 days and it's not moving on the primary channels, like even say it's not short dated, that's an item that's just not worth holding. It's not worth paying storage costs. It's ready to move. So I think having that full picture is difficult. Like working with a lot of big companies and being like, having your overstock data is cool, but like the way we can really integrate with your company's operations is like give me the data of how your warehouse operates. Give me the data of like when does your storage renew? Like when are you bringing in new pallets? When do new trucks get loaded? Like that helps us understand like how can we create like a flywheel system.
Got it. Um, and so you're both operating like, in regulatory markets that are regulated. Um, Amrita, will go first when you like how are you guys handling that piece of it? And is that like a hindrance to your business or like a core feature of it that you see as an advantage? I'd like to hear
Yeah.
more.
Good question. So we've partnered with we're a California-based company. California obviously leads the country in climate action, which is great. It's a great place to be if you're building the kind of company that we're building. And we've partnered with the state of California and also Alameda County. They've given us grants to focus on SB 1383, which is a Senate bill that was passed that, again, we do a lot in the food space and especially in the food industry, like food and beverage distributors, grocery stores, companies like Safeway, like Rayleigh's, like a lot of the big stores that we have out here, they can no longer dump overstock. So no food, pretty much food waste can no longer happen. If it does happen, they will face fines and they will also be exposed. They have like the Senate has a list, the government has a list of companies that essentially violate. So they're trying to really hold, especially these big enterprise companies, responsible because there's so much food waste and there's so many people in America that again, like they cannot afford groceries at like whole food level prices. So that those partnerships and working directly with these organizations, which again have pushed this bill through, are helping educate a lot of these big companies, these big grocery chains, like grocery delivery companies, on like you need to follow this now. Like this is something that like you will be fined. Like you will be publicly like in some ways like shamed, has been really helpful for us because it's been a catalyst for a lot of companies who have historically not been sustainable now being like, okay, we need to be sustainable, we need to think about this.
So is it a catalyst for your business is like people are actively, or I should say companies are actively like searching out solutions to handle this.
Yes,
So that's an
this
interesting tailwind. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, this bill was passed last year, and honestly, when Senate bills get passed, it takes like low key, sometimes it can take years for the public to even know about them. Like I think the average Californian has no idea about these rules or these regulations. But businesses now they need to think about solutions because those fines are not going to be sustainable, especially like with a platform like ours where they can make money. Like we're taking you from with the fines, you're at negative, with us, you're at positive.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I'll come back to this. But Amantha, I'm interested to hear like on your perspective, a bit different of regulatory environment. But
Different
obviously,
regulatory environments. Yeah.
yeah,
I think, it's kind of like this built-in moat, right? Like it's extremely difficult to kind of spin up, a service where we're shipping prescription drugs, and sometimes those go over state lines. And how do we make sure that we're not only federally compliant, but on a state by state basis compliant? And so we're also based here in California. We found it very important to move in step with regulation. So we actually are licensed as wholesalers here in the state of California from the Board of Pharmacy, because we essentially we broker transactions. And while you could argue that we are just software and that we are not brokers, it was very important to us in a industry that relies a lot on trust to move with the guidance of state regulatory boards, national regulatory boards. And so I think it makes it very difficult for other people to come in, not just from a regulatory standpoint, but that relationship and trust building.
totally. I've got two more questions for you guys, and then we can wrap it up there. But so, and you guys can choose who goes first. But what's been your biggest challenge in running like a surplus inventory marketplace, and how did you overcome it? Amrita, you can go first. I guess that would be.
I think one of the biggest challenges, and this is something that we faced early on, and now we have enough data that like we're able to build models around this, was just like the variability. It's like we were doing food and beverage, which was a big category for us, and then we had one of our customers was like, I have like two full truckloads of like pet food. And I didn't know anything about that category, and like apparently pet food doesn't expire, which is interesting to me. It's under like the dry grocery category if you go to any grocery store in America, but it doesn't expire. And I was like, well, why are we liquidating this? And they're like, it's not moving. Like, it's very heavy. It's a ton of bags. They're 15-pound bags. Like, it's not selling. It's just not worth holding this. They're like, we need the space for other pallets that we're bringing in. And so we were able to clear that. And it was like an item that I kind of had to learn. I was like, do we have buyers for this? Like, if we don't have buyers for this, can we bring buyers on? I'm like, who's going to be able to take two full truckloads? Like even like a zoo might not even be able to accommodate that much. It's a lot of product. It's the kind of quantity that would need to be put in like multiple Costco's. So I think the variability of overstock that we were getting early on, like I think as every founder, you want to work with every single company, especially when you're building something sustainable because you're passionate, right? And us having to turn down customers early on, like we weren't doing apparel and clothing initially or accessories. We had a ton of brands reaching out with these categories, and we had to just tell them, we're like, this is not a core focus right now. It may be in the future. Like, I've saved your details. I will reach out and you will be the first person to onboard when we expand to the accessories category. And I felt bad doing that, but having to focus and not have like a little bit of volume in like 100 different categories was a choice that I made. So I felt like it would be more sustainable and more scalable if we actually had some focus.
So you started with like a very specific kind of beachhead market and went from there.
Food and bev.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, something you knew well, um, and that's fascinating. Because we did hit on this earlier with Amantha that like I kind there's only two types of marketplaces, but I kind of view that there's like evergreen supply marketplaces, and there's marketplaces where you have like very very ephemeral supply. I think excess inventory is like one marketplace type like that. Another one, which is totally different, digital good, is like AppSumo, which has deals, which don't
Yeah.
necessarily come back. And so I think they have just very different characteristics. Like FOMO and pricing are huge like triggers in those marketplaces. Like a discount really matters, and how much you discount, and then also just timing. And so you very much have this like push style marketing out to your like buyer base, right? You got to tell them, hey,
For
this is
sure.
available now. Come in and get it.
Yeah, like one thing again, I'm a technical person, like from technical background, we did not want people searching our marketplaces like in eBay. Like eBay is great for
Hmm.
consumers, but for B2B, when they're buying in such high volume, they're trying to like pick stuff up tomorrow. Like the timeline really matters. We do definitely emphasize, like we've integrated within their existing workflow. We will push out inventory lists and deals to them. Well, like this is a flash deal. Like this needs to be out of the warehouse tomorrow. Like it is a 31st, storage renews tomorrow. This needs to be loaded on a truck and going somewhere. That's like the deadline on it. So yeah, we definitely thought a lot about product from a technical perspective.
Amantha, what? How about you? What's your big hurdle, and how do you overcome it? Probably more than one,
Yeah, I
but
think like getting better and better at the matchmaking, right? Like, how do we take all the inventory that's on there and find the specific buyers? And that's something that's been a really good focus for us. But, just get.
uh oh. I think we lost Amantha again. It's okay. So, Amrita, we can wrap it up with kind of my last question. I think you know now that you've kind of made it this far, you've you know raised around. Looking back, like what advice would you give to someone looking to build a marketplace now? Um,
Any type of marketplace or specifically in
yeah,
our
or well, I mean, it could be in the surplus excess inventory space. It could be generally. What have you learned?
I would say really hone in on the people who buy over and over, like the people who keep coming back. Because it's like marketplaces are really hard to build. Like everyone knows about the cold start problem. And like there's a couple of buyers who like I early on was like calling them for every single deal. And like they like these are people who are really old school. Like they have no idea how Silicon Valley works. Like they don't know anything about the tech industry. They're old school people who make thousands of purchases in the overstock space a month, and we were having really good conversations. And like I actually like I was out on the East Coast and I drove 2 hours to Edison, New Jersey to visit one of our buyers in person who had a great experience. He was like calling me every single week being like, what do you have for me? Like it was like that personal kind of experience. And like he took me through his whole warehouse. He showed me all the categories. He had all sorts of overstock he'd bought. He had like vacuums. He had like stuff that he'd got from contractors, like bricks that you would use in a house. He had a
Hmm.
ton of makeup that the packaging was wrong or the packaging was changed, and he was like, what is this? He's like, what kind of product is this? And I was like, this is highlighter, this is lipstick. Like he wasn't obviously the primary demographic for it, but he bought it because it was a good deal, and he was like trying to figure out how to market it. And I think spending that time in person with with our buyers early on, they're not the ones we monetize off of, but they are a crucial part. Like they're the demand on our marketplace. I think a
Hmm.
lot of people don't focus enough on the demand. Like the buyers ultimately are the ones they're the ones making thousands of purchases a month, and they're the ones that like are marketing it to their friends. Like if they're like, my warehouse is full this month, I can't take any more pasta. My friend up in this part of Jersey, he'll be able to take it. Like that's where a lot of our referrals came from on the buyer side.
Interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, I kind of say that there's like this long short strategy um, in marketplaces where at the beginning it's like, can I find really unique supply that people want to buy, and then at the long term, what really matters is like demand aggregation at scale. Like you just got to capture the demand and aggregate it, and the supply will come to you over time. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of I don't know. That's kind of how I think about it, and so it sounds like a very similar experience for you. Well, we're
Yeah.
going to wrap up. If anyone has any questions, shoot it in the chat there. But wanted to first thank Amantha for being on. We just had a few phone troubles, so unfortunately she's not here at the end with us. Um, but then thank you, Amrita, for coming on and telling us about Sotira. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
It's great being able to chat about what we're building. A lot of
yeah,
people find it interesting and they don't know a ton about it.
where uh, where can people find you, and what can they help you on?
Yeah, for sure. I'm really active on LinkedIn. Like, if people have any questions about marketplace building, about any of the things we talked about, like aggregating supply versus demand, our website is satira.co, SOTIRA.co. Pretty active there. You can join our newsletter. So, yeah, those are the main places that you can find us. And we'll definitely be putting out more content on what we've learned from building marketplaces, like inspired by Colin, obviously.
Oh, thank you. And since Amantha's not on, she is also very active on LinkedIn. It's a good place to find her. can go to RxPost.com to learn more there if you're a pharmacist and have drugs to sell. And then thank you everyone for listening. This is peer-to-peer episode number 2. I'm Colin Gardner. I run the Substack Take Rate, talking about all things marketplaces all the time. So subscribe and get everything in your inbox weekly. So, all right, thank you so much, and until next time.
Thank you.
Bye.